everybody, I'm Trellis Usher, and you're watching Pax8 Live.
It's a great atmosphere and it's very cozy, despite the fact that there are 1,700 people around you.
This is where we show you the future. You guys want to see the future?
I'm really excited about bringing Beyond to Europe.
I think the most important element that sets Pax8 Beyond apart from other events is that we really place the MSP at the core of this event.
It's all about the business of an MSP, and it just shows that Pax8 really understand what partners need.
So Beyond really focuses on 3 pillars: our education, our innovation, and our community.
In Norway, we basically don't have any MSP community at all, so going to an event like this is super useful.
I think it's going to be a phenomenal opportunity for everybody in the MSP community.
And I think it's just going to be symbolic of Pax8 just expanding across the globe, but honoring the regions and what makes them unique.
I think what Pax8 are doing for the partners is just unbelievable.
You want a little more? Okay, because we're not done.
Digital transformations are changing our view of what's possible, what we can accomplish, and how far we can go. In the Pax8 marketplace of the future, AI helps illuminate new opportunities, and your whole portfolio is within reach. You can go to market faster, work more efficiently, and accelerate your success, all with an intuitive interface designed to scale as you scale. Infinite growth is possible in the new Pax8 marketplace.
What's up, everyone? Happy Wednesday, and welcome to the game on Pax8 Live, the show where we talk about all the cybersecurity shenanigans you need to be aware of. We have a pretty cool show coming up today. We have Scott Rich from SentinelOne joining us here in a bit. We're going to check out SentinelOne's new purple AI product, see what that's all about. But before we do that, let me get through some housekeeping. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, comment, all that jazz. If you'd like to interact with us, the best place to do that is on Pax8's YouTube. So youtube.com/Pax8Cloud. That's where you want to watch it because we can actually see your comments there and pull them up on the screen if you've got questions. Don't forget to sign up for Security Bootcamp. That's in Phoenix next month. That's a 2-day tabletop, we'll call it. We're super excited for that, a highly immersive event. Don't forget to sign up for Pax8 Beyond. Berlin is coming up here really quickly, so I'm not even sure if there's space left, but if not, don't forget to sign up for 25. Let's bring on Matt and get into the show.
Man,
what's happening?
Dom Kirby, it's great to see you, buddy. It's great to see you. I got a big day. I'm sitting here at Wild West Hackin' Fest, and our badges this year are super dope. This is the speaker's badge this year. It's got a bunch of challenges you have to go complete. So things to, whether they be, I actually don't even know what it's going to be yet. We're going to have to dig into that later. We were doing our slides today, but I'm in Deadwood. I'm at Wild West Hackin' Fest, and I am preparing to speak in front of a lot of my peers that are much smarter than me about a topic where I'm even being disingenuous in my attempts at what I try to do compared to their efforts and capabilities. So it's going to be fun because we've got dope meme game, so that'll make up for a lot of the problems here. But also super excited that I'm going to be doing a live stream with my friend Jack Scott, who was the beginnings of the JAX Act. She's a former Special Forces operative and just an all-around brilliant human. And I'm super excited to get to meet with her. It's been a long time coming. How's your week going, man? Sounds like you've been in a whole lot of budget fun this week.
It's 2025 planning season, so yeah, doing a whole lot of that day job and math, but we'll get through it. I have been, we were talking about before the show a couple of incidents, but there's a couple interesting ones out there, so I thought we'd deviate for a minute.
Let's do it. I love doing it live. We'll change a little.
And let's talk about American Water. That's a big, this is not a little side hustle, small town water utility, is it?
No. In fact, it serves, if I remember, most of the Midwest, right? And several of my friends, Cody Kretzinger and a few others, have kind of been losing it about it, right? Talking about how poor the communication has been, how much lack of comms we've had. And in fact, Dom, a little bit, like I feel like we're backsliding, just to use a little Southern religious term, I suppose. But I feel like we're backsliding a smidge, right? In the sense that we have a scenario where it is becoming less transparent and less accepted for people to push back.
Yeah.
I mean, look at the case we had in Ohio, right? The mayor that's suing over the guy that said, hey, this stuff's on the dark web, and I'm being a little summative. You've got a situation like American Water where they're not sharing much information. In fact, there's several cities that have had major compromises, have been down for weeks and weeks and weeks, and they never say anything. They just ignore it. It is perplexing to me, Dom, that we're, in some ways, it feels like going back 3 or 4 years. I don't know what your thoughts are on it, but I don't know. Maybe I'm just.
I mean, it wasn't that long ago we were talking about how much more positive it's gotten. And, maybe it's because we follow the news a little less now that we don't do a news segment. But I do think the incidents we do hear about are so much reporter speculation, right? And you're hearing from like Cody that he's not hearing anything. So yeah, I don't know. I think there's certainly not a downtrend in attack, and there's a downtrend in noise. So I would agree with you on that one. Yeah.
Yeah. And then when they do, they often don't speak to the scope. They're not held to the same standards, especially when it comes to cities and things. But I think this American Water one, with them shutting down systems, they haven't spoken to what's actually going on, right? They're at a point where essentially they're still delivering water because it's a life thing, but they're saying they can't bill for it, which is funny. I think Cody said, man, I hate that it's almost winter. I'd fill my swimming pool up today. But I digress. Anyways, and it goes back to actually, when Jen Easterly kind of took over initially, one of the statements she made, and I think it still holds true today, is that threat actors probably exist in most of our critical infrastructure and are simply waiting for the right time to take action from that perspective, right? And I think you're seeing a very interesting, great proof of that in the Verizon and AT&T. I don't know if you're following that, but in that Verizon AT&T hack that came out, that they talked about, or the breach that came out, they essentially said that there's a back-end system that exists for the federal authorities to request FISA warrants and things of that nature, and there was a threat actor living in it. Right, there was a threat actor living in that system for the last X period of time, X being undefined, potentially months, all doing espionage things, right? This was an APT doing this. I think if I remember correctly, it was a Chinese APT. And so we're seeing that play out. So not to get too far, sorry, everybody that's watching, if we went a little more rhetorical than we normally would. We're working on some things in the background, and I really just wanted to chat about the news a little. Anything else on your mind right now, Dom? There's been a whole bunch of stuff this last couple weeks.
The APT conversation is interesting, and it's definitely one I love diving into, because the incidents we talk about are the explosionary ransomware, data theft, extortion. But those persistent threat actors, we don't see them until they want to be seen, or we stumble on them.
And even then, they probably don't want to be seen ever, right? Yeah, like 100%.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's terrifying, right? Like, how many people are on either AT&T or Verizon? I'm actually looking at the article, and I'm not getting a number, but that is state-sponsored threats, right? And I think people don't always understand that. That's a very, very different form of intrusion than we see in the commercial world. So
yeah, it's absolutely nuts.
Anyways,
and
how are
when
we
you think
looking on
about
the
it, it's
tech
interesting. I think we're good. We're gonna cut here in just a second to the brilliant words of Robin Harris. But before that, the other thing that I think I learned from this hackening project, and we're going to talk about it on stage, is, and I got this pushback from John Strand when I asked them to help. He says, my guys are afraid of burning their TTPs. He said they're afraid. And as a matter of fact, Black Hills is actually tracked by CrowdStrike, right? They have them listed as an APT. They have them triggered. It's kind of a cat and mouse game back and forth of what they know. And so the interesting part was, I think if our pen testers have those type of capabilities that they've been doing, hiding and using, then our threat actors do too, right? They can't be any less good at this. Anyways,
it's actually such a well-funded group, right?
Yeah, 100%. When you've got all the dollars, all the nums, right? Yeah. Well, let's cut to Robin Harris, and we'll come back and meet with the brilliant Scott Rich. I love this man. I'm super excited to get to spend some time with him today and talking about how LLMs and other things are being used in ways to help offset the adversarial gains and removal of their buried entry. So we'll come back after that with Scott Rich. Thank you. Let's go.
Are you ready?
I don't know if you've noticed, but the year is basically almost over. We are in Q4. We're in Q4. This is like the last quarter of the year, and then we're at 2025. And so what I want to invite you to do is to close out the year to look at what you did well and where you need to give your cybersecurity and your compliance initiatives and your controls some love to bring them into the new year ready to be fully functional. And it's really good in agile project management. You do the thing called the retrospective, where you look back on what you did well and you assess and you look backwards and then you look forwards. It's really good to do that with your security posture and your compliance initiatives, and to take some time to just close things down. What do you not need to carry forward? Where do you have some gaps that just did not get resolved that need to be prioritized coming into the new year? At Pax8, we love quarters. We do everything by the quarters. We're always doing quarterly planning. Looking at each quarter, mapping out roadmaps. It's become so typical that I've actually brought that home and put that into my personal life. My husband, again, is like, oh, this sounds like one of those quarterly project managers. Yes, it is. Yes, let's plan the quarter. You can put this strategy into your business. You can put it into your personal life. But it's a really good habit to think of. And since we're coming to the end of the year, let's be really strategic about where we want to go and what level we want to play at in terms of our security and our compliance in 2025, and start setting that game up now, because we're going to look up and we're going to be well into Q1 of 2025. Time is flying by. Let's close out the year on a sweet note, on a secure note.
Time to level up. Level up.
Man.
All right.
Let me. We need to have Robin as a live guest on the show again. It's been too long.
Yeah. People need a dose of unfiltered
We
Robin.
make that happen. Yeah.
For sure. We've got some producers here. Scott, great to see you, brother. How's life? Tell me how things are going in your world.
It's been great, Matt. It's been too long. Looking forward to Pax8 Beyond and EMEA next week. And we have had a great launch of Purple AI and Watchtower with Pax8. A lot of great stuff coming, and more to come.
Well, that is specifically what we're here to talk about today. And I'll set the stage for everybody in my own words. If you think about what has happened with AI, at least in its very specific functions around LLMs and things of that nature, it's really made it easier for me to go put in a LinkedIn site, pull up Scott, gain information about him in his disk profile from this other AI tool that I have, start to figure out how I might best send Scott a phishing email, and head down that path, right? And so what you're finding, in my opinion, is the use of LLMs for the threat actors is reducing the barrier to entry in a way that it's making them more effective, it's making them more contextual, it's making them more accurate, and it's also reducing the speed to play time cost to do that. I don't have to sit and do a bunch of OSINT on Scott. I can ask a system to do it for me. So what that brings us to is now we wanted to focus in on how the other side is being used. And I'll say it myself, I believe that we are just at the very, very baby little bits of what AI will do for us in the future. And we love you, our AI overlords. But the point is that we're at the very beginning of that. And so what we wanted to do is find products where we can highlight and showcase the things they've done to try to level the playing field. And that's why I wanted Scott to come on and show this. And I'm pretty much going to turn it over to you, Scott, and I'll ask questions where I need to, but let's let you run with it, brother. So thank you for being here.
Yeah, well, I really appreciate it. And, it hasn't been a secret that I've had a bit of a disdain for the capabilities of AI over the years. I mean, it's a very cool technology, and prompt engineering is a very interesting field. And some of the ways, like you mentioned, that adversaries are utilizing AI to, make their attacks more effective. It's been very fascinating, but when it really comes down to the meat and potatoes of, okay, so what's my practical application of AI as a defender? Now, SentinelOne, we've been using behavioral analysis for the better part of a decade, and how our agent works. That's been the core of our business for a very long time, focusing more on individual behaviors and tactics and techniques rather than signatures to convict a chain of events.
Yeah.
So that's great on the malware side, on the anti-malware side, and it's been very effective for us. But there has been an operational need, especially on the defender's side, for making these tools easier to use for the blue teams like they've been for the red teams. Okay.
Yeah.
And one of the
So in
ways
essence,
that we've
trying to
done
reduce
this,
the barrier to entry, right? The concept is what can we
yeah,
do to make them more effective or reduce the barrier to entry to their use, right? That's essentially the premise. Is that how I understand it correctly, Scott?
yeah, exactly. And one of the things that we've kind of discovered is that, and this has been true for AI for a long time, but it's that the more you try to get an AI to do, the worse it gets at everything. In fact, it's very
Fair.
much like people in that regard. So and also, the more information you feed it, the more likelihood you get of things like hallucinations and just very questionable returns and
Sure.
misinterpretations of the data. So it's with all that kind of a thing in mind that SentinelOne, just over a year ago, we created Purple AI. And what it is, in a sense, is it's a digital assistant that is dedicated to only SentinelOne and the SentinelOne platform. This approach really kind of gives a lot of advantages. First and foremost, data privacy. So we don't use the internet. We don't train the models with customer data. The entire Purple AI platform is very modular in nature, which means that we can swap out individual components that if we feel that we can make an improvement. So for example, when we first launched it, we were using GPT-3 as our large language model and our plain language translator, if you will. And it just really wasn't working for us, and we decided to swap it out with GPT-4. So that's really, it's quite as easy as that. And then because the orchestration service that actually fields the queries and gathers the information and feeds the model back to generate your results, it has full access into our threat intel library. It has access into our support system. It has access into our knowledge base. So you're getting access to all this information through a common prompt.
So let's tackle some of these. Hold on, let's tackle some of these so
Sure.
that people that maybe don't understand the concept of what we're talking about here can follow. So what you've just said to me is you don't train it on public data, so you don't take anything from the internet, so you have less chance of having things that you didn't intend for them to be in there. You train it on systems. And one of the interesting marriages I think that you're going to show and talk about is that you're training them on threat intelligence, which means that the LLM itself, Purple AI itself, when I say, show me TTPs for scattered spider, could interpret that potentially, right? Because you are concatenating those based on that. Does it help with that part of it, getting that threat feed and threat intel so that you now can use that in somewhat common language questions in that regard? Is that what that's for?
Yeah. So if you think about it from a procedural standpoint, right? Let's say that if you're a threat researcher or a
Threat
threat
hunter
hunter
in
for
your case,
your
yeah.
organization, then you want, and someone asks you, say, hey, has Fancy Bear had any activity in my environment in the last 48 hours? Okay, so first thing you need to answer is, okay, well, what constitutes Fancy Bear? Okay, what
Correct.
TTPs are going to be associated with fancy bear activity. And what happens when you write a plain language query like that, and I'm going to do this live for you all, I promise. So you'll actually get to see the tool work. But is that it will, the language model will actually be picked up by the orchestration service, and then it will generate another query that's going to go back into our threat intel library, which is comprised of a lot of different sources. Okay, we have very, very strict controls on that information. So again, to reduce the likelihood of hallucinations. And then it will grab hashes and IP addresses and domains and individual indicators and all of these different things. And then the orchestration service say, okay, well, I've got all this data. Now, how do I build a query with it for our Power Query in the Singularity Data Lake? And then it'll assemble that query for you. Then it shows you the query that it ran. And then it'll show you the results and then even give you a summary on it.
And I imagine these queries, like I'll tell you, when I write code with Copilot, for example, and I'm not the best coder in the world, but when I ask Copilot to write code for me, it is almost always more complex, more documented, more structured than the things I would have made. I would imagine in these query languages that start to show up from that type of a request start to be probably more complex and more nuanced than I would create myself in the same regard, right? Like if you have all these different things, like search for these IPs and or these hashes and or these things from these sources and these spaces, like all that stuff is stuff that I would have to know to go do in that side of things, right? I'd have to have that contextual awareness that now is being built by that. So I think that's probably one of the biggest values, in my opinion, is bringing that threat intel together into usable queries. Now, as long as that's highly successful and doesn't hallucinate and has a lot of false positives or false negatives in that creation, then it's I think it's a good thing. So anyways, continue. I just was thinking about that on the side, is that makes it more complex probably than I would have done.
Yeah, and you kind of hinted at one of the other use cases for Purple AI as well, is because it's so good at generating these queries, because that's what it's designed to do, is it's a wonderful teaching tool for how do you write queries in our Singularity Data Lake. Any of the queries that we generate, you can copy and paste them directly into Power Query. You can use them to build dashboards. You can really use them in any way you see fit, reverse engineer them, because a very straightforward
Well, don't miss
query.
that. Let's pause there for a sec. What you just said was I can take a query that was created by asking it a question and then make a dashboard for my SOC 1 analysts to look at, or make a dashboard for my executives to look at, right? Like, so you've not only gave it that, but you've given the ability to give heads up displays and things that matter, especially if, let's say, you're in the critical infrastructure, or you're in something that has a very high degree of targeting. You could have heads up displays of when that target is either increased, or when you're starting to see TTPs in that space, or whatever it may be. I really do like that. Give you the pieces to go build more persistent things out of that as well. I just don't want to miss that. It's not just in the moment threat hunting of did someone do this, but it could be used as, let me just keep a constant display of what's kind of happening here, right? And looking for certain things. So anyways, just side tangent, but yeah, wanted to cover that.
Yeah, well, it's a very good tangent, because the new version of the SentinelOne console, dashboards are an integral part of it. In fact, as soon as you log into the console, and I'll be showing all this to you here shortly, but it will, these, you can just simply select whichever tab you want, and then you can build dashboards. And if it's something that you like, you can share it with the rest of the team. If for MSSPs and MDR services, they can create their own dashboards that have just a very high level view of the activity and indicators, or whatever it is that you're looking for across all of your customer base.
That's cool. Well, I don't want to steal from the people, Scott, so let's get to the demo, my man. I think that's what people are here for.
All right.
Kinesthetic experience.
All right. Well, that sounds like a wonderful idea. So we're going to go ahead and jump right into it. And just wanted to make sure that you guys can see all this okay.
We got you. Yep, we got it.
All right. Super. So right off the bat, I'm just going to talk about 3 different use cases. We've already talked about 2 of them already, but the incident response is usually what's on everybody's mind. Okay, an alert comes in, and time is of the essence in every single case. Now, we're really, really good at responding to threats as they happen, identifying the behaviors, and using the attack as a roadmap to respond to the threat. Okay, we're really, really good at that. But there are just more serious questions that need to be asked, like, how did this start? What made up this attack, and what can we do to maybe even strengthen our security posture to kind of keep this from happening at an earlier stage in the attack? So with Purple AI, if you notice, I clicked on this attack that I ran here this morning, that Purple AI immediately gives me a summary, just a little one paragraph about this particular attack or this particular alert. This gives you it's not going to replace any analysts anytime soon, but it's going to give you some of these breadcrumbs of where to look and give you just that nice abbreviated version of exactly what transpired. So from here, I can actually jump in and I can go to my storyline, which is usually what an incident responder is going to do. And this is going to pivot directly into my event search or my Singularity Data Lake. And as you can see, I've got all of my events. So I got 2,300 of them that are correlated for this particular attack. Okay. Now I want to keep this in mind that this is an attack I wrote. Okay. All the PowerShell code is mine. All of the batch files that I use for orchestration are mine. The DLL that is used as a part of this attack is 10% mine. So this is not on the internet. Okay. And I like using this attack as an example because this kind of shows where if you're looking on the internet for individual, signatures inside of this particular chain of events, you're going to have a hard time with that. So I can click on any one of these particular alerts. Now, before, what you would have to do is you'd pivot into your process tree right here, and then you would start going through the individual chain, and you'd start looking through the who, what, when, where, and how. But I can click on any one of these events in this entire chain, or the storyline, as we like to call it.
And Purple AI is working through, giving me a digestion. Yeah, that's really cool.
Yep. And yeah, exactly. So here you can see PowerShell.exe identified as a parent process.
Oh, that's so good.
There's a command line, and it's a nice 2-paragraph summary of exactly what transpired. And say here you can see iExplore.exe was signed, so we can assume that was a legitimate process. But there was also some other indicators that said that maybe I did something a little bit I probably shouldn't have. And since we look at PowerShell, we're like, oh, okay, well, let's go ahead and start zeroing in on PowerShell. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to grab a different filter for command scripts, because I know that that all PowerShell commands that are run as a part of during any attack or on an endpoint with SentinelOne, you're going to capture all of the PowerShell code. So here's that pwn.ps1 script that ran, and I can see the environment variables that were loaded when PowerShell kicked up. But I see this guy, like, oh, okay, maybe I want to zero in on this one. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this particular event. Oops, clicked on it twice. And because I clicked on the PowerShell event specifically, now it's going to give me a little bit more in-depth information as to exactly what I'm looking for, because it's summarizing.
So if you were trying to write up what happened in an event, you could actually probably pivot through some of these things, right? Like you could be like, all right, let's say it's a six thing event. Let's say it doesn't have 1,000 events in it.
Yeah.
And you were wanting to write something up to explain what had happened and what was stopped. You could start with the macro description and make sure it checks out. Like, and I don't want to forget this, guys and gals, when you read this, don't trust it fully. This stuff hallucinates. Like, trust it a lot. It's going to be way more better. That's a real word. Way more better than you maybe digging it up and trying to figure it out. But just make sure that you're making sure everything checks out. But to the point, Scott, you could imagine me clicking on those, grabbing the text and grabbing some more of those contextual aspects that are more related to each event piece, and having a pretty good story to tell and understand what happened and make better contextual decisions on. Like, do we involve incident response teams at this point? Is it something where we believe we have this in a well enough story that this was stopped? I mean, there's some things that could come from that are pretty neat. And so far, just reading this,
well, imagine dumping all that into your ticket. Like if you're investigating an alert and you're throwing all these notes in your ticket, even that's a lot of defensibility that you're probably not writing down today.
100%. Yeah. Creation and modification times are both set to a future date, which could attempt to evade detectors. Just super cool on some of the things they wrote down.
I will say,
this is my first time seeing it.
AI to point out that pwned.ps1 is suspicious. I'm just saying.
Touche, sir.
It would have been funny if it called me out. Clearly, this attacker has a sense of humor.
That would be awesome, actually, right? If
That
it
would
went
be
into that,
great.
that'd be so good. This hacker is trying to make a play on. Anyways, I digress. Continue.
Mhm. Yeah, so this is really one of the bigger use cases for Purple AI. It's just the idea that, is this going to replace a security analyst? Not in a million years. Okay, maybe that day might come someday, and people like me will become very irrelevant fast. But it hasn't happened in 25 years, and I don't think it's going to happen now.
But what it is doing,
But
Scott, what it is doing
Mhm.
is it is reducing the barrier to entry for that first frontline tech that looks at this or that touches this or whoever that maybe not as experienced threat hunter, maybe not experienced, SOC level 1 human that's taking a look at these if you don't have an MDR service, and at least gives you the ability to be faster at discerning context with enough relative belief in the accuracy of it to go, this is a problem. We need to deal with this, right? Or this isn't. So anyways, just great side tangent of what I think it actually does is reduce that barrier to entry, which means it reduces the time to detect, right? Not necessarily in the actual tactical aspect of it, but the time to respond as a human entity and how you make that response during that investigation would be probably faster for the bell curve of humans in my mind.
Yeah, exactly. So let's go ahead and move on to the next use case, which is one of my favorites, and that's threat hunting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up here to one of my shared accounts here, which with the rest of the engineering team over here at SentinelOne. They love running different types of attack scenarios and using all different kinds of manner of tools and things like that. So this is a really, really good place to kind of start doing some looking. So if you notice, I click on Purple AI, it brings up a nice prompt, and you'll see some notebooks here on the left. And keep in mind that while we're working, that all the queries and everything that I'm running is going to be kept in a notebook. So if you actually have a set of queries that are returning sets of results that you like, you can save them as notebooks, rename them,
Yeah, that's
share
cool.
them, all of that other kind of thing, and replay them anytime you like.
Yeah, especially if you
So-
wanted to group like functional threat actors you were monitoring or the different types of queries you have for different financial clients versus others, you could start seeing that segmentation and structure be very valuable, I think.
Mhm. Yeah, so as you can see, we've got a few sample questions that are already preloaded in here, which you can click on and it'll go ahead and run them. But let's try something else. Let's say, let's make sure I can type today. Has there been any APT 29 activity in the last 72 hours? So, like we were talking about at the beginning, what's happening now is our GPT-4 engine's actually taking that plain language query, and then and handing it off to our orchestration service. Then that orchestration service reaches out to our both our support and our knowledge base articles and as well as our threat intel to not only figure out what constitutes APT29 and the types of techniques and tactics that they use, but how do I build a query with all of this information that I've got? Now, I didn't return any results because, thankfully, it looks like APT29 hasn't been in here. But
Old
can you
Cozy
imagine
Bear.
trying to write? Oh, you want to do Cozy Bear? I can do that too. But could you imagine trying to write a query like this?
No, it's huge. That's exactly what I was conjecturing earlier, is the size and breadth of that is encompassing, right? And I think that's the piece that would be harder to replicate as a human, is just the work it takes to be encompassing of all of those different TTPs and all of those things that exist. So that was instant. I mean, really, it was almost instant. So
yeah. And so I happen to know that a couple of people on my team have been playing with some Fancy Bear stuff lately. So I'm going to go ahead and use Fancy Bear. And also because Fancy Bear borrows from a lot of other people too. So there should be definitely some data in here. So again, we've generated our query. And if you look down here at the bottom, so there's a little bit fewer hashes in this, but we've got a whole new group of DNS domains and things like that they're using. And then also, you notice how they even threw in combinations of individual indicators.
Yeah,
along
that's
with
cool.
all of this as well.
Yeah, the target file path, target file SHA-1, all of these things we're looking at. Yeah. No, it's really neat, and it does seem to build
Yeah.
the queries very similarly, right? Like you have your at the bottom you have your indicators of APT namings. At the top you have a lot of hashes. In the middle you have a bunch of IPs. So it does seem to build the query in the same logical manner, or at least similar logical manner.
Mm-hmm. And here we can see that we've got over 1,000 results that have returned. Throws them here in a table for us. From here, we can pivot directly into Power Query. I can just go straight into the query window if I want, okay, to start manipulating the data or start going through it. I can click on any one of these, and look at that. Purple AI
it
is
pops it
actually
out.
going to
Oh,
go
thank
ahead.
you so much. I was so happy that it
Yeah.
did not take over my awesome search, but it popped it out. Very good.
Yeah, so you can actually individually go through each event and start say, oh, but you know what, this one looks like it might be a false positive. Okay, no wait, whoa, this is something interesting.
Yeah,
So,
totally. That's really
and
cool.
then what will happen is that the orchestration service will summarize the results that it found and give you even some suggested follow-up
Even better,
questions.
the follow-up questions, though. That is so dope.
Yeah, that's
Because now they're
amazing.
saying we have identified Naveen's and we've talked about the files created. That is a very specific set of two things to look at that came from up there, event ID ending 162 and 163 file creation, right, from that asset. So that's really neat. And it tells a better story for someone reading through this too, right? Here's the question, here's the answers. Here's the question that came from that because it now says I had Fancy Bear activity on any endpoints, right? Let's look at that. What's the, are there any network connections initiated? If you click on that one, what happens?
Yeah.
The bottom one.
And if you notice, we've got a couple of thumbs up, thumbs down right here. So for
feedback.
example, and this is a, yeah, we actually have a direct feedback mechanism so that if it gives results and if this is helpful and the thing's working right, give us some feedback. Let our team know. If you
Fancy Bear's clicking that down vote 1,000 times. Down vote, bro. Down vote. I digress.
Yeah, right. But yeah, it'll ask, you know, where it went wrong. Okay, and those go straight to our product teams and the people that actually work on these algorithms. So, you know, nothing is perfect. I mean, even though we've had this running for over a year now, it's still considered an emerging technology, and we're always looking to get better at it. And when we get to towards the end, after a demonstration part, I'll kind of talk about some of the stuff that's coming here down the road.
Yeah, very cool.
So one of the other use cases that we kind of hit on already is that this is a wonderful teaching aid. So, for example, if you're a first level SOC analyst and your boss comes walking up to you and says, "Hey, has there been any PowerShell activity in the last 24 hours that's resulted in a network connection?" Well, that's a very simple question. It's pretty straightforward. But if I were to ask you to write this query in Singularity Data Lake, that, you know, it might take you a little bit. Okay, so with Purple AI, you can just simply go, "Has there been any let's see, PowerShell activity in the last 24 hours that resulted in a network connection?" So what's going to happen now, again, is the orchestration service is picking up this plain language query, and it's going to go and look into our knowledge base and say, okay, well, how do I generate a query that looks for these particular fields? And bam, there it is. And then, of course, it'll go through and detonate the query and give you your results right here off the bat. So this is a wonderful teaching tool because you can either open it directly in Power Query here, or you can just go ahead and just copy and paste this. That's all there is to it. And then queries like this, you can
go ahead.
build dashboards.
I was going to say, especially if you're especially if you're documenting your process, right? Like if you're trying to say, here's what I ran, here's what I got, here are the things. Like it's really nice to have that, the filter in front of you so that if somebody that is more experienced in that space or maybe is reviewing your work from a threat hunting perspective, can easily see what did you do? Is there anything messed up in this? And they could also give that, you know, feedback to you. So I do like seeing the query, and I would definitely copy it and say, this is what I ran. Right to your point. But the notebook kind of does that for you as well, it seems. Does the notebook show you each of those moments as you continue to flow? And therefore you would have that as
so
somewhat
if
of
I
a
actually
semi-perpetual example.
Yeah, if I actually click on the notebooks, and you can see I've been doing a few demonstrations and so you can see some of the other queries that I've run. But yeah, absolutely. And
Very
there
cool.
it is, and it even shows the results that it brought back.
Yeah,
And
that's
then you can just
valuable
simply
for
rerun
later.
them anytime. And it also ties well into that note-taking story as well. And then the final use case that I kind of want to touch on really quick is that Purple AI, because it has access into our knowledge base and support articles, that if you are having, let's knock on wood, right? But these kind of things happen, that maybe you've got an agent that's unhealthy, or it's dropping network connections, or something is going wrong with your agents. You can say, how do I, let's see, troubleshoot a S1 agent dropping.
Glad it's you typing and not me. I'm 10 times worse.
Yeah, and
Especially
actually,
me
in on my main laptop screen, this font is very small, so my LASIK modified eyes are really struggling right now.
It's fair.
And bam, here's the whole. Here's a nice article here on how to troubleshoot a SentinelOne agent dropping network connection using the SentinelCTL command line.
Yep, and
And then
start
you
by
also have
pinging
links
the host, right? If you can ping the host, now we look at services. Yeah, it's a logical walkthrough. Makes sense.
Yep. Yeah, so there's that. And then also, if you're an MSP that, you got onboarding a brand new customer and maybe they don't have anybody that knows how to write PowerShell, and they want to deploy SentinelOne using a GPO, well, all you can just say, write me a PowerShell script to deploy the SentinelOne agent. And now keep in mind, it's not reaching out to the internet, and going to Microsoft's libraries and say, all right, well, how do I write PowerShell? This is all contained as far as PowerShell pertaining to SentinelOne. Okay.
Yeah.
And here you can see that we've got a test path, and basically it's even built in a little check to see if SentinelOne is actually installed already, or actually it looks like if that agent is present. So if we got the MSI package is present and it's making sure that it's there, then it'll go ahead and run the MSIE exec and the instructions on how to do it. And then you can
Could you ask it to add a specific? Can you ask it to add a specific client's GUID that needs to be part of that argument list as well, where you were able to say, like, add this GUID for this client to the script?
You can do this. In fact, I'll just say add a check to see if the agent is installed first, because I noticed that's one thing that this script is missing.
Sure.
Because you don't want to be rerunning install packages all the time. Yeah. And here we go. And there it is.
Yeah, nice. So they
here
added
we
in
go.
the check.
Yep.
So you got your WMI query. Yep, nice, very good. Agent installed.
Could Purple
get
AI
WMI
also
object
go in and
class.
Yeah.
Yeah, and could Purple AI also go in and like pull a site key? So if I wanted to deploy
That's what I was
to
wondering. Yeah.
Tim's Kitten Shop, can it go pull
that's
the
an
site key and
interesting
throw that in there
case,
too?
but no, not in this sense, no. And the reason for that is because site tokens are considered protected information. So something that you would actually have to be aware of. And
can you ask it to add a spot for me to input the site token on here so that it would have the script ready for me to put that site token in? And see if it would build that for us. You know what I mean in the script?
Matt and I are just predicting support ticket number 1 with this particular.
I am.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Let's see. Add in a block for the site token.
Nice. Yeah, it should have contextual awareness of site token in that context, I would bet. It's a thing.
And what's interesting though is that this is one of the first times that I've run this and it didn't actually put in the site token check.
Nice. There you go. Enter site token for SentinelOne agent. And you could play with it, right? You can massage it to ask how it does it.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want it to be a prompt for the user. I want to have a static place for that site token.
Give me an argument.
Give me a variable for it or something.
Yep.
So that's cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
So, Yeah, but leveling up your SOC and support teams. This is really what SentinelOne Purple AI is about. It's not
Sure.
trying to be everything to everyone. It's not trying to just be a note taker and and give you a better recipe or anything like that. This is a dedicated SentinelOne assistant.
Yeah, it's really neat. I could see, I would have used this in the past. I definitely would have. I would certainly have not
100%.
made my own
Yeah.
query languages. I would have said, do this for me right now.
I can't write
100%.
KQL to
certainly
save my
would-
life, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah, I came from an ArcSight background many years ago, and I couldn't even. I mean, the things that we used to have to do manually is just insane.
Oh, yeah. Well, let's just talk about building that query. I would have to go to every TTP or hash or IP or piece that exists and write that into my query without breaking the syntax, without ensuring I'm searching a broad enough context. I haven't made some mistakes there. Like, there's just, I guess that's my point of that barrier to entry reduction, right? Like, as long as this is
like
even
if
bell
you-
curve accurate, yeah.
Well, and hashes are unforgiving. We can't so if you screw up a single bit in your hash,
Right.
the search is done, right? So
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So we're really super excited that this finally got launched with Pax8 last week. This is a big deal, and I've been in security a very long time, and it really hasn't been very often in the last 25 years that an advancement will come out that really changes the game.
yeah,
I
yeah,
agree. And I
absolutely.
think we're at the beginning stages of that in my mind. But yeah, 100%.
Well, and like thinking about, Purple AI is just a great example of using AI sort of for its quote intended purpose, right? Helping the right people do the right thing. And I really hope that expands across sort of the whole ecosystem, right? If we're going to implement AI, let's implement it thoughtfully. And the containerization and the limitation of its context is fantastic. And then let's roll it out in a sustainable way, right? So that's a good example of that, because there's so many products out there. They just slap in a ChatGPT REST integration and be like, bam, AI.
Done. AI solved.
Done.
And I have to imagine, I have to imagine, Scott, the more people feed back to this type of a very closed system, the more effective and accurate it gets over time, right? Like if I'm putting a thumbs down and saying it failed because it gave me the wrong thing, it didn't include a site token, there could be back-end query changes to say, this thing should have had a site token in it. Why did it not even have that there from the beginning? This is like, right to your point, Scott. And I think those refinements cause those GPT models to get better and better. I would actually say, and you might blow my mind if the answer is yes, but it would be amazing if your own MDR team is also feeding back to those things and using it so that those intelligent eyes are putting in feedback that has molded this over the last year. So not sure if that's the case, but if your own vigilance teams were using the Purple AI to feed back to it with those queries, you could see that being a very, very effective means to train the query language long-term, or train the model
Yeah, well, without giving you the recipe to the secret sauce, what I will tell you is that we do utilize our own tools everywhere. And that's
my
pretty
heart
much where
happy,
I will
Scott.
leave it.
Makes my heart happy. So that's kind of what I hope to hear. So do you have anything else you want to cover, Scott, that we haven't really touched on yet? I mean, we've really shown a lot of use cases. We've kinesthetically played around with the platform. Like Dom and I love to do it live because it'll either break or it won't. And it looks like we made it through and things function. So that's awesome. Anything we didn't cover, brother?
Yeah. So along with Purple AI, we also launched Watchtower, which is SentinelOne's threat hunting service. So a lot of people are already very familiar with Vigilance, which is our MDR, where you have SentinelOne employees that are looking at your alerts and they're doing an investigation. They'll take any additional remediation action above and beyond what your security policy has. They will, provide annotations and, give you a little bit of that feedback just to kind of give you an idea of what's going on with those particular alerts. But the component that was really missing, in my opinion, for that story for Pax8 offering was the threat hunting component. And with Watchtower, what that allows you to do, now you do have to have the EDR component, obviously.
Sure.
Without EDR,
Stands to reason. Stands to reason. Yeah.
But they will use all of our tools that we have at our disposal, all of our threat intel feeds, which come from all over the place, not just our partnership with Mandiant, but our threat researchers all are mostly in Tel Aviv and elsewhere in the world, in Europe. And they will create star rules. They'll do additional threat hunting activities for all kinds of different types of things: misuse of identity, insider threat, any type of new TTPs or 0 days that might be exploited. That, hey, let's just be honest, right? That maybe our agent didn't pick up, because anybody who sits around and says that, oh, you install us and you're done, that doesn't exist. That's not a thing. It's never been a thing, and it never will be a thing.
Thank you. Thank you. Say it again louder for those in the back.
Yeah.
That's not how it works.
There is no product that will fix it all, I promise you.
Well, in a lot of ways, when you talk about threat hunting, what is threat hunting, right? For a lot of people, in my mind, what it's doing is you use anti-malware software and you're assuming it's going to stop things. But there are techniques that come out long after the behaviors might have been detected. That might be something where you're going to want to go back and look and see if there's active evidence of things that are there and persistent that might not have triggered something before. And so I think, Scott, to your point, threat hunting is the active process of looking for the bullet holes. Right? Like, and what I mean by that is I like to explain threat versus vulnerability to people. Vulnerability for me as a human, I am a giant bag of flesh and bones. I'm super vulnerable to bullets. Not great for my overall health. But a threat is when someone has shot me. That is a threat, right? A threat is an active and kinetic action. And so threat hunting is looking for evidence of bullet holes. And if you're not doing that, then you aren't doing your full due care in how you manage 13, tuning security event alerts, how you're managing 13.1, how you're managing 10, and its real extensibility. So threat hunting to me is this active process that says, I'm looking to see if I've already failed somewhere. I'm looking to see if something is happening and I have a threat actor. Is that a good definition, is looking for the bullet holes, Scott?
Actually, I would rather equate it to being poisoned.
Oh, okay.
Because you may not
Fair.
have known that you got poisoned.
I knew it was Colonel Mustard. I knew it.
No, so I'll give you a good example that's very real world. Okay, the bring your own device driver attacks that were starting to get prevalent about 2 or 3 years ago. Those were a huge problem for everyone. Okay, there were some activities that did get picked up, and then there were some that weren't, especially in the early days. And it stands with reason that there's gonna be another, maybe a 0 day with a remote code execution exploit, or there's going to be a new tactic or technique that we're just not able to pick up, or no one, right? But that activity is still in the EDR, right? It's because the agents are still looking at everything that's going on that endpoint as it's happening. All right. So unless they manage to successfully kill the agent, it's
one would hope you have processes to find. If that's the case, if you have an agent not checking in.
That's where the threat hunters,
great call out.
Yeah, that's where the threat hunters really earn their pay, and that's where they are taking.
I want to make people understand that, Scott. A lot of people have this belief that an EDR is only recording things after an event has fired in the moment. But EDRs are actually gathering a lot of data and sending that at all times, regardless of whether there was an actual event at that moment. Is that a fair statement, Scott? That SentinelOne's collecting log information? And the reason that matters is 8 and 13. Control 8 and CIS talks about logging. And why do we log? Control 8's for after the dead body's on the table, right? That's what that's for. Control 13 and 13.1 says that we should have an ability to look for events. It's the SIM rule, right? But in a lot of ways, an EDR and an MDR that's collecting these things has the ability to query posthumously, has the ability to look at these things in time as well as also after the fact, meets that. From that perspective, from actually meeting 13.1 would be something like this that's storing that stuff, because guess what? Later on, it could be determined this is bad. And we might need to be able to look back and see if something happened that was bad at a time we didn't think it was bad. I think just to make sure everybody understands that very clearly, what we're doing here. So
yeah, and to take that a step further is insider threat. Most insider threat activity will not generate an alert. Period.
Sure, 100%.
Okay.
I just sent files off. Copied them. Yeah, exactly.
Yep, authenticated user accessing resources. They've got privileges too, and they are doing something with it that they shouldn't be doing. All that data is still captured in the EDR. Okay, it's not just for malware. In fact, I taught a class a while back on how to use EDR for information protection.
Exactly. That's epic. All right. Anything else to close us out with there, Scott? I keep taking the mic back from you, but you got such good stuff that keeps sparking me off in convo.
Well, it's just like every time we sit down and chat, Matt. I love our conversation.
That's true. It's true.
Nope, that's it. Just wanted to thank you guys for the time, and it's a pleasure as always, and looking forward to seeing you again, my friend. And
Yeah.
let's keep spreading the good word.
It's awesome. Yeah, and just as a quick recap, if we want to go to the play of the game, I'll go ahead and recap us as where we're at. All right, 60 seconds. I'll try not to blow it. Essentially, threat actors have had the barrier to entry for them to move forward in their world lowered. They have LLMs. They have the ability to search about you. They have the ability to deliver a payload. They have the ability to grow in their own capabilities. And we need that too. And I'm not saying it's all SentinelOne, but we now offer SentinelOne Purple AI. But ultimately, finding ways that we can make our own humans better at their jobs, being better and more contextually aware, being able to make those decisions as to what is really happening in front of them. I'm not certain if Dom's doing the play of the game or it's me, but I've been speaking, so we'll let Dom finish it up. I think I'm on the back end here. Okay, it was me. I lied. All right, that was a production failure on me. I apologize, y'all. Play the game. Purple AI makes life easier. It uses it. Watchtower is also threat hunting. If you're not doing threat hunting, if you're not looking and querying in your own stuff, you should be. That's the play of the day.
Game over.
All right, despite a minor technical glitch, these things happen. We are doing it live. Matt still nailed the play of the game on the 60-second clock. And I must admit, I deer in the headlights on that because I didn't know if you all could hear me. Nonetheless, that's our show for the week. Next week is Beyond Berlin, so be on the lookout for those updates. We're super excited for those of you who are joining us at Beyond Berlin, and we'll see you next week.